Check 1, 2.
Check.
THPN Studios. Attention, THPN Studios. Can I get a hoya?
Hoya.
Episode 2 of the City Life podcast. What's up, Kyle?
What's up, Isha?
Take 2. All right, you take the lead on this one. You're driving the bus on this one today, episode 2.
Well, yeah, I just I wanted to ask you a simple question, but before I ask you that, we'll just kind of like get into what happened. So Isha originally went to university for child and youth development. Sorry, I'm like fumbling my words like
shout out to Honey
today.
Sticks.
So anyway, he had an abrupt career change within the last couple of years. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about what made you make the jump from child and youth development and care to podcasting and just media entrepreneurialism.
Not bad. It's a long story, and since this is a short podcast, we'll keep it brief because I've told this story many times. But long or the short of it, there were two key things. One was the political atmosphere that my university was in and my program was in at the time. It was more talking about politics and venting frustrations about, the world. And this was right before Donald Trump was elected. And obviously, whatever political side you're on, it doesn't matter. It made waves in the world. Let's just say that.
Yep.
I paid a lot of money to go to university. I worked a lot and, to save up to pay for these classes. And, I'm still paying off student loans that I took to really take school seriously. And I felt I wasn't getting my money's worth at the time. That and the work is hard, man. Social work, counselor. I mean, working with families. I thought, put it this way, academically, I was very good at it. I was good at analyzing situations but putting it into practice, not to say I was bad at it, but I was one of those guys who would take it home with me, and it was very, very hard work.
Yeah,
so
I imagine that being quite a difficult and common thing, probably.
Yeah, man. So you got to have tough skin. And my peers who are killing it today in that field, there's various different fields and strands that you can go based on that program, but everyone in the respective field is fucking killing it. A lot of good friends of mine there, and they all have tough skin. So I kind of was at a crossroads, and I just abruptly left the program. And funny enough, it was a podcast. So it was, like I said, it was two things. It was the political atmosphere and just me not necessarily seeing myself doing that career long term in various different paths, counselor, EC, early years development, all of them, social work, whatnot. That I don't know. I've always loved sports media. I was getting into hockey. Well, I've always been into hockey since we've met. Knew I wasn't going to be a rock star anymore. Kyle, still chasing the dream. And mind you, Kyle still is a rock star. So there you go. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and there was one podcast in particular. And I told this right before we started recording. I said, you can credit my decision to go down this path to this podcast called Serial. Kyle didn't know what it was, but Kyle's not in the podcast series. Anyone who's into podcasts, Serial is like the GOAT.
Sounds super interesting though, so we're gonna check it out later. 3
unbelievable seasons. One of the best podcasts out there, one of the best produced podcasts out there. That got me into the podcast world. And I was always into sports broadcasting, sports radio, like AM radio and stuff, TSN radio, RIP 1040 in Vancouver. So it was like a mix of the art side of producing a story, like story form podcasting, and CBC does a great job as well. And there's so many other outlets these days, right? Yep. As podcasting just booming, branded and whatnot as well. And just like my interest again sparking from that side and the traditional sports, sports talk radio and whatnot. And I really wanted to do something in the middle. So I started an independent podcast while I was taking just some English courses because I left my program, but was still in university, didn't really have a full-time job. And I was like, shoot, like I have student loan money I'm living off. Like I might as well continue school. So I took a couple of English courses where I had one teacher who worked for the CBC. Yep. Canadian Broadcasting Company, for any Americans watching. They all know CBC, Hockey Night in Canada, shout out. Dawn, Cherry here. So she used to work for the CBC and basically said, encouraged me, said, Isha, you should just do this, like go all in, go through the podcast route, get into local radio, whatnot. And
you did actually, didn't you?
Well, that's exactly the next step of the story. Is my business partner, Dylan Keyzer at the Hockey Podcast Network and Amaze Media Labs. Him and I did an independent podcast where it was kind of a mix of live sports radio, but through a story podcast production lens, where we went all out with the production, whether it was clips, whether it was background music. It was a comedy show. They were longer podcasts. They were an hour to an hour and a half, but they were well produced and great. Every episode was standalone, despite some of them being timely because it was about the Vancouver Canucks and local British Columbia hockey. That got picked up on local radio in Nanaimo, so we had more content, 2 extra hours a week of content, which we pulled right off the air, put it on our podcast feed. And that's where we were able to work out the kinks as independent podcasters, right? Fast forward a year and a half, I really, again, because of Serial and season 2, fell in love with the kind of Middle Eastern history and modern Middle Eastern history, Afghanistan and stuff like that. So to finish my degree, which by the way I still never finished,
2 classes left.
I dove into religious studies, which is basically like religious history, and a lot obviously
fascinating
took place in the Middle East. While I was doing that, Dylan and I started the Hockey Podcast Network. Fast forward another year, pandemic hit, a lot of personal changes happened. I moved from a different city, the pandemic shook up a lot of things, as everybody knows. And the Hockey Podcast Network basically was funded and partnered with Amaze Media Labs, and things just took off. So I didn't go back to school. Dylan and I, now it's year 2 as partners with Amaze Media Labs, year 3 of us running and operating and managing this network. And the long or the short of it, in 7 minutes, that's the Terry Ryan version of your answer.
Well, it's amazing. Thanks for
do you have any follow-up? We have a few more minutes here. I know we're trying to keep them 5 to 10 minutes, but I tried to get as much detail in that storyline.
I guess how many employees do you guys have currently? Like through the broad spectrum, doing podcasts.
So the network division, which is the Hockey Podcast Network, the Pigskin Podcast Network, and the Basketball Podcast Network, we have 2 employees. We have our boy Brandon Rewicki, who does a podcast with the Hockey Podcast Network, the Skates and Plates podcast, covering basically, he's a foodie and he covers the Winnipeg Jets. So he works with us. He's a full-time employee at Amaze Media Labs and the network. And then we have Josh Deming, who's our YouTube guru, and he solely runs the YouTube division of the Hockey Podcast Network. That's it. We have a couple prospects in mind, and as we take the next steps in 2022, we're going to be bringing in hopefully another staff or 2. But no, man, Dylan and I and Brandon, we're the staff, man, at the network side division. Amaze is growing, and they have multiple staff now as they work on branded podcast stuff with bigger clients. But on the network division at the mom and pop shop, no, we're working, as you know, all day, every day, brother.
So walk me through a typical day at work for you guys. Where do you start?
Emails.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of emails.
Dude, because we're on the West Coast, we work with predominantly people out east in New York, or just on the East Coast where there's more people in the sports world. Makes sense. They're sending us emails at 5 a.m. our time, right? I mean, they if they start early, which a lot of them do, and I love them for it because I love starting early. We're starting really. Now, mind you, I don't wake up at 5 every day, but no, we're starting. Get all the emails, get all the Slack messages from hosts, whatever dealt with, get our daily tasks. If it's paying staff out, or not staff out, paying our contributors out, sponsorship money. And if it's that time of the month, we do that. If it's wrap up decks for our sponsors, we do that. Depending on if it's contest time for social media posts, we'll do that. If we have to prep a stream, we'll do that. There's never a dull moment. There's always work to be done. So depending on where in the month we are, that's where our tasks are first. But it's always emails and host requests first.
Well, tell me how you find time to do this other stuff with me outside of all that. I
have no idea, Kyle.
Is it a stretch to squeeze it in?
It's not a stretch. I mean, it's literally a stretch, but no, it's a pleasure. It's my self-care.
Well, perfect. That's awesome. Well, thank you for walking us through that.
Thanks, buddy.
It's pretty awesome what they do. You can check them out on YouTube, the Hockey Podcast Network. Go listen to their podcast. They're amazing, thorough, well edited, awesome content, and they are just crushing it. So go and have a listen.
That's it for today. Until next time, we say peace.